Hey, what's happening out there, YouTube? Got this 2000 Mitsubishi Eclipse. It's the V6, the 3.0 liter. I got one of the heads sitting out here on my workbench, and don't pay any attention to those 4 bolts sticking out of the head bolt slot. I'll get to those in a minute. But anyway, so we blew the timing belt on this thing, and unfortunately it bent quite a few of the intake valves, with being an interference engine. Some people get lucky when they break a timing belt on an interference engine. Unfortunately, we did not. So you can tell I got the rocker arm assembly out of the head right here, so that may help you recognize to see if you got the correct one. Okay, so here's the deal. On changing the valves on this type of head, the issue is the spring compressor. Getting down there with those springs to get those compressed, to get the keepers out, to get the valves out, and so you can do the valves and the seals and be done with it. Okay, so there's a part that you can buy. It's actually the special tool Mitsubishi has. It's about $350. I've seen it a little bit less. Seen one on eBay. Guy wanted like $100 for it, but it was like missing parts. So I'm like, what's the point? Alright, so I came up with my own design. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to go to Lowe's. You got to make yourself a list, or Home Depot, or Ace, or whoever your hardware store favorite is. So you're going to need to get 4 of the 7-inch 5/16 bolts. Alright, so 4 7-inch 5/16 bolts. You're going to need 8 nuts. Each one's going to require 2. And you're going to need to get yourself some aluminum flat bar. Alright, so I got these pieces that I span across. Once I get the washers on, I'll show you more about it. Washers and nuts to facilitate the spring compressor that I also had to custom make. Now this piece right here is from, I'm sure you recognize that type of spring compressor. Well, it's not going to work on here because they get these 24 valve engines, and they're really close together. They're inset down, they're at an angle. You're not getting your typical valve spring compressor down in there. So this one is the one that had the 2 little side pieces that come down and actually hook into the spring. This is the compressor part. Then they had the 2 black pieces of steel that with the hooks on them to hook into the spring. I took those off. I actually drilled out the rivets, and they were riveted in here. Drilled out the rivets. They came right out. And then I made 2 holes in that piece right there to accommodate 2 1/4-20 bolts. Actually, screws or whatever you want to call them. I call them bolts. So what you're going to have to do is buy yourself that spring compressor, and then you're going to have to modify it. Take off the black hooks, the spring hooks, drill out the rivets to do that, and then you're going to drill 2 1/4-inch holes on the side there. Boom, and you can kind of see it. Boom, to again facilitate those 1/4-20 bolts. Now, you can get yourself a piece of flat aluminum bar. This is probably like about 1.25 inches, somewhere in there. I don't know, but it's about 8 inches long. And then you're going to make yourself an elongated slot. I used a jigsaw to do that. So get yourself some metal jigsaw blades, and you'll be able to just cut down the middle, make yourself a slot to be big enough for that center bolt of the spring compressor. Don't know what size it is. I made the hole about 1/2 inch. It's nice and loose, so it can slide as you need it to slide, and you'll see more about that later. Then you're going to need to get, well, you just buy one old long piece of about inch and a quarter aluminum flat bar. I believe it's a 1/4 inch. Then you're going to need to make yourself another one. Then you're going to need to make yet another one. So you're going to have altogether 3 pieces of slotted 1.5 inch by 1/4 inch aluminum this bar, and then this piece right here, actually the 2 pieces that span across the head, you're going to bend those down in a vise at about 20 degrees. Somewhere around there. Again, it's not rocket science, so just get yourself a little bit of a bend so it can pretty much match the bend angle of how the valves are in there. The valves are in at an angle, they're not straight up and down, so you'll see more about that later. So again, you'll need 3 pieces of bar, about 8 inches long. That's what these are, they're about 8 inches. I got about 6.5 inches slotted out. I made these 2 pieces right here. They got to accommodate the 5/16 inch bolt. Those guys right there. Okay, so I made those about 3/8 so they can kind of slip around, be nice and loose. And then on one of the ends, and you'll see again more about this later, I had to notch that out to make this thing fit in there. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll go ahead and kind of walk through the assembly of this valve spring compressor, homemade, that you can do right in your garage. You're going to need to have a jigsaw, you're going to need to have a drill, you're going to need to have a vise, you're going to need to have some drill bits, and you're going to have some files to file down all your crap, you know, your little burrs and so on. I would recommend doing this well away from your work area, because you are going to have little filings and so on that you want to kind of have. This area over here is your clean area. I manufactured this in another portion of my garage. I vacuumed everything up, again, just to kind of keep any garbage, little metal filings and so on completely away from your head work. Okay? So, we'll go ahead and assemble this bad boy, and I'll be right back. Alright, now let's talk about the assembly of the spring compressor. Alright, so like I said, I bought the 4 7-inch and they're 5/16 inch bolts. They're carriage bolts. Alright, and they're going to slip up into the bolt hole for the head bolts. You want to make sure that you use fender washers at the head of the carriage bolt. Alright, so these are also, you know, got a nice little shoulder on them. They fit up in the section of the head, which isn't going to really matter if it has thread or not. So again, carriage bolt, 7-inch long, 5/16, and you gotta have the fender washers, and you don't want to put any pressure so you mar up the bottom of the head. Pretty gentle. Alright, so first thing that we're going to do after we do this, of course, is we got to have 4 of the 5/16 inch washers, and you're going to just slide those right down over the carriage bolt. Alright, so each one of my 4 bolts has the washer. Then they're going to get a 5/16 inch nut, and then we're going to go ahead and anchor that thing down. I use the type of socket that you can slip all the way down over the carriage bolt. You're going to have that. Alright, so I'll be right back. So I have the 4 bolts in. I have the washer, and then I have the nut on each one of the carriage bolts. One tip I might add, do not buy the galvanized carriage bolts or any of the fasteners, because you're not going to be able to just put that nut on there and spin it down like crazy, and it just ain't going to work. You'll wrestle with that all day long. So again, you just got to have this kind of socket that's got the hole all the way down. I got my set at Lowe's like a long time ago. Hopefully you have a set, but because it's so long, you're going to have that to get down there on it. So that is one thing that you got to have. So again, you do not want to have the galvanized type carriage bolt. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put on another nut because these bolts just essentially become a stand for the valve spring compressor. So you got to kind of play with it. There's no rocket science with how far you put the nut, down on the carriage bolt, but I do put a washer. All right, so you'll see why in a couple minutes why you're going to have that on there. Okay, so I'm going to get these all set up and I'll be right back. Well, there you have it. I got the 4 carriage bolts in. I got the nut for the kind of the stand part, and I have the 4 5/16 inch washers setting on the nut. So there you go. That makes your stand. Now we're going to go back to those pieces that I told you to manufacture. All right, so they're going to rest right on top of the carriage bolts. All right, so you'll slide that back and forth, and you'll see why you need that, just for your adjustment. All right, so we'll get the other one on there. All right, there you go. So we'll go ahead and we'll put another washer on each one, and then we will anchor that down with the 5/16 inch nut. All right, so there's 4 of those, and I already did one of the heads, so all this stuff is nice and oily, and these nuts just slip right on, no problemo. These pretty much is finger tight because you want to keep this loose so you can kind of slide it around, make your adjustment. Just play with it. It's really just a matter of what works for you, what's comfortable. I mean, when you manufacture yours, you might be able to take even better measurements than I did and really get this baby fine-tuned. So there you go. We got this portion here. And what I might add also, on the end here, you're going to drill some bolt holes. I use 1/4 inch bolts. I made like a maybe a pretty big hole. So it's not a 1/4 inch hole. So I wanted to have a little bit of wiggle room there. That might be 3/8. That might be 5/16 inch hole. So there you go. So at the end there, where I'm going to take the valves out, I got the little 1/4-20s that come up through there, and they're kind of my guide and my anchor position for my valve spring compressor. So I'm going to go ahead and mount this and then turn the camera back on, and we'll be ready to compress some springs. Alright, so now I got the spring compression portion of the spring compressor, God, that's a mouthful, all set up. I got it resting down on the valve spring. Alright, so you want to make sure you don't have it placed over the keeper. Keep it clear of the keeper. I'm pretty close, but I'll be fine once I start compressing that down. It's going to be hard for me to have the flashlight on there while I'm doing this, so I'm going to pull the light away. Or maybe I can just kind of stick it in there like that. Hopefully it'll give us a little bit of light. Hey, not bad. Alright, so now I'm going to go to town on compressing the spring. Alright, so again, I got it with a washer on that little stud, the 1/4-20 stud I made. I put this thing all in position, and keep everything kind of loose so you can do that, because it is going to want to kind of go where it wants to go. And so then once you get in a position right on top of the spring, you're going to then tighten everything up. I don't go crazy tightening it up, just matter of fact, I do it all by hand. I don't even use the socket handle. Alright, so then you compress it down. Now, what's happening here is that the spring is pushing the valve down. So what I've been having to do is I got to pop those valves back up. Whatever system that you have to do that, you might, I'm replacing the valves, so I'm just going to kind of pop it up with a little hammer, but you might want to use a little rubber mallet or whatever you got to make that happen. So I'm going to go and turn the camera off, flip this up. But one thing that you got to know is that you got to keep your finger over those keepers, because you pop that valve up, those keepers are going to fly. Okay? So just be careful there. and I will zoom in here so you can see what I'm talking about. See, the valve's going down with the spring, and I'm going to flip this head over, pop that valve up, and I'll be right back. Alright, so I flipped her over and I just barely tapped on that valve and she came right up, and then you can see that those keepers kind of came loose. So what I'm going to do now is, again, I'm going to put the flashlight down. I got my little magic magnetic tool, a must have for doing valves. Got to have it. So now I'm going to take my magnetic tool, I'm going to put it right down inside there, and I'm going to pull those keepers right up. So they are right on the end there, and I'm going to set them down here. I'm pretty meticulous about where I put stuff, so I'll put all those in a Ziploc bag. Happen to have one handy right here. I don't really separate them by which valve they came out of, because a keeper's a keeper. You know what I mean. So now what you're going to do is you'll just simply back your spring compressor off. Take your compression, back it all the way up. One tool that has absolutely been awesome for me is I just get a nut driver to loosen these dudes off the stud. My 1/4-20 little doodad down there. Take it off the rest of the way with my fingers, and then I'll pull the compressor off. And now I have the spring top. And one little bit of note is the tops of these are painted. They got to go back in where the top is painted. Alright, so now you can see I got the valve spring out. I got the valve seal exposed. Looks like literal crap. It has to be replaced. Now I will just take all these valves and I will push them out. So I got my work cut out for me. It'll take me probably 45 minutes to an hour to get all these babies out. But this spring compressor, it's a must-have. There's other ones out there in the market that are kind of generic, but this one has been just totally fantastic. Like I said, I already did one of the heads. You know, it went pretty smooth. I mean, there was a couple modifications I had to make on it. Like the initial design, I had this little section down here to accommodate the bolt. Wasn't enough. I need more ability to slide this guy all the way down, and it just makes it a lot better. So I hope this works for you, and I will be back to show you the finished product. Okay, I thought I would take a shot of putting the keepers back in. So since I seen you last time, or you seen me last time, I got all the springs off. Alright, pulled the rocker arm lifter assembly off. I think I had that off already. Put all new seals. Each one of the valves has a new seal. And now, like I said, I'm putting back on the springs and the keepers. So no real trick to this other than compressing the spring in kind of reverse order, getting the keepers down in there. Sometimes you got to make sure that the spring goes straight down around the valve so you can make sure you have plenty of room. Then I'm going to go ahead and try to lift up my spring compressor, and let me see if I can zoom in a little bit. This is kind of tricky. And you should see the spring just rise up with the top on it and just fall down in there. Now, not all of them do that. You got to kind of go up and down a couple times and wiggle them around to get them down in there, and then bring the spring compressor up, and your keepers should be nice and retained in the valve spring cap. Alright. Okay, I'll do another example of compressing the spring to prepare it for the keepers. See how I have the valve centered around the spring and the cap there? And as you push down with your compressor, oops, hands are a little slippery. As you compress down, you should see the valve poking up through the top there. And obviously the valve is stationary. It's the spring and the cap that's moving down. Alright, then I'll get my keepers over here. And this is probably going to be kind of tough to do. But I just drop them down in there. And then I'll just slide that one to the back. See it? Oop, there it is. Slide that one to the back, because you ain't going to be able to get the one in the back if one's in the front, if that makes any sense. It'd be really tough to do. Alright, so then I'll grab the other one, make sure that it's the right direction. Can you see it? The lighting is terrible, I realize that. So there you go again. You drop it down in there. I do apologize for the crappy camera work. So if you do have the valve straight in the spring, you should be good to go. So now I am going to uncompress. Bada boom, bada bang. You got yourself a valve spring that's been revalved, resealed, got the new keepers in there, and good to go. Alright, so after putting the seals in, got the timing belt back on, put it all back together, and she's not leaking. It dropped. I left the timing belt cover off of the forward head, and you can see she's not leaking. I hope you can see. Let me zoom in. Neither one of them are leaking. I've been running it for a while. Nothing. Clean as a whistle. That's what the one in the back looks like too. So I'll let it warm up for a while. Keep checking it. And while I'm doing that, I'm burping the radiator. That may be another YouTube video. But for right now, I'm just happy that this thing is not leaking. So anyway, there you go. So this should be it. If you have any questions, put them in the comments. And happy riding. Driving.